now. So Mary, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself and your company?
Absolutely. I'm the Executive Vice President of Multimodal Enterprises for Bi-State Development. Bi-State Development has an interstate compact that was enacted by Congress that provides authorities to operate and maintain transportation facilities. So that would include our region's light rail and bus service. We are responsible for an airport, the tram system at the Gateway Arch and the riverboats in front of the Gateway Arch. My role as it relates to the supply chain industry includes the St. Louis Regional Freightway. This effort includes implementing a comprehensive regional approach to freight management, infrastructure, and marketing through public and private sector leaders from 2 states, Missouri and Illinois. And then by doing this, we are maximizing multimodal funding opportunities by partnering with all the modes of transportation. So it's the trucking, the rail, the barge, our airports, with manufacturing and logistics companies, and then most importantly, the public side, and that's the Illinois and Missouri Departments of Transportation. And then the other part of my responsibilities focus on building awareness of the region's global logistics capabilities. And we do that, part of it is by partnering with our sister cities. So like Kansas City, Memphis, we partner with some of the Gulf and coastal ports. And then we also generate and share great content that highlights specific developments and investments as it relates to the supply chain. Mm-hmm. And then prior to that, I was the regional engineer with the Illinois Department of Transportation. I was responsible for Southern Illinois and Southwestern Illinois, about 1,300 lane miles. I'm a civil engineer by trade. I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Missouri, Columbia, and I have a master's degree from the University of Missouri Science and Technology.
Oh, are they both in engineering as well?
They are. They are. And I thought I was going to be an engineer for the next 35 years, and you could not tell me otherwise. And in fact, my master's degree focuses on geotechnical engineering, and I for about 3 years. And then I moved on throughout the Illinois Department of Transportation. I think really that master's degree just gave me the confidence. I moved fairly quickly within the organization, and it gave me that confidence in with my counterparts who had more experience than I did.
Oh, that's very cool. I went to an engineering school, so that's all. I didn't major in it, but I went to one.
Oh, so where did you go?
I went to UW-Platteville.
Okay, well, very nice.
Yeah, so you said civil engineering. I'm like, I understand what that is. But it seems like the supply chain found you. You didn't go out searching for it in a sense. How do you feel about that?
Well, number one, it was a great opportunity. And it obviously was not something that I had anticipated. I worked for the Illinois Department of Transportation for about 23 years, enjoyed every minute of it, decided I would go work on the private side for an engineering company. I did that for a couple of years, and then the position with Bi-State Development became available. And I was really interested in it because it was a multi-jurisdictional opportunity to set transportation priorities. I obviously had a lot of background in that, working with the Illinois Department of Transportation. But the other intriguing part was it was an opportunity to further my career. It was an opportunity to learn more about the rail industry, barge, the airport, the trucking, manufacturing, logistics. So my transportation background opened the door for me, and with some of the contacts I had from both sides of the river and at a national level, it just seemed like a great opportunity.
Yeah, I bet. And so there's actually a big joke that my college campus had, was that it was called the Platteville ratio. So there was always 2 guys to every 1 girl in classes, because it's an engineering school and that's an industry that's typically dominated by men. And so you were in engineering, and now you're in the supply chain and logistics field, which is also very traditionally dominated by men. So how does it feel to be a woman in these industries?
It's fantastic. I love it. I have been very fortunate with being surrounded by mentors and sponsors. A mentor is someone who guides you and gives you advice. A sponsor is somebody who advocates for you and your projects. And being in both the engineering field and the supply chain field, I've been really fortunate with finding individuals who have supported my abilities and the projects that we were working on. And most recently with this position I have with the St. Louis Regional Freightway, this is where it's been lots of fun. I've built new relationships with people in the trucking industry, and that's where they are very motivated to work with myself and my staff in the region, working with the rail industry. They recognize the benefit of having this collaborative approach as far as setting transportation priorities. And so as far as being a woman in the industry, it's fantastic. For some women, sometimes we have better communication skills. And so that actually has been an advantage when it comes to working with a predominantly male profession.
I bet. And then, so we can't not talk about COVID in this discussion. How has that upended the logistics sector?
So I'm going to focus on the positive part, and that's the St. Louis region. We continue to have lots of successes when it comes to investing in our infrastructure and working with some of the global companies in this area. And as a result of COVID, we're hearing lots of discussions and plans to reshore manufacturing and logistics to the States. And for the St. Louis region, we have a track record where we're able to attract global national companies, and we can offer that supply chain talent workforce. So for the St. Louis region, we've got a track record of attracting companies like Bunge. And so their headquarters recently moved to Chesterfield, Missouri. They already had their research and development facility in St. Charles, Missouri, and they had one of their prominent barge terminal facilities in Fairmont City, Illinois, which is in our bi-state region. So this is an example of with COVID and discussions about reshoring or partial reshoring for the St. Louis region, we stand ready. And that's where for any of those discussions, we have the workforce to support it. And then when there's any type of shift in freight volumes, or if there's a supply chain disruption, for our region, we have significant capacity within our freight assets. And so that's where when you see those shifts, our region stands ready. We've got the capacity. And in a short period of time with that intermodal connectivity we have from barge to rail or barge to truck, or just utilizing the 6 Class 1 railroads that we have in this area, that's where we're always a reliever when you see those shifts and changes.
Mm-hmm. And St. Louis is such like a logistics hub as well, because it's so central in the country. And I'm from Wisconsin, and that is not as central as St. Louis is.
Yeah, and so actually for our region, you know, we consider ourselves a global logistics hub. Part of that is, like you had mentioned, our central location in the U.S., but we also have the most strategic location on the Mississippi River. So we're ice-free and lock-free to and from the Gulf of Mexico. And so what that means is for the locks, they act almost like traffic signals for barge traffic, which adds time, and time is money. And so for the barge industry, it's most cost-effective and advantageous to utilize that stretch from the St. Louis region to the Gulf of Mexico. That's your cheapest rate for barge movement. And obviously barge transportation is cheaper than rail and for trucking. And then our freight assets, we have 6 Class 1 railroads. And so basically what that means, you've got easy access to all 4 quadrants of the United States. When a shipper puts that commodity on a Class 1 carrier, you don't really need to go anywhere else because we've got 6. You basically have direct access to anywhere you want. You don't have to go to another region and move it from one carrier to the other. We have 2 international cargo airports. Our port system is most efficient. We're the 2nd largest port system. And then we have 4 interstates. So we consider ourselves a global logistics freight hub. And like with all the changes we've had in the supply chain, we're able to accommodate those changes, but obviously we can carry a significant amount of freight volumes.
I'm sure as more companies start to open centralized warehouses or to be closer to the customers, I'm sure that region is going to be huge in the next coming years.
Yeah, and a lot of that ties into the e-commerce market, and that's where they are changing their business model, wanting to be closer to their customers. And so that's another example for the St. Louis area. We've had significant growth as it relates to bulk distribution and spec warehouses. This is actually one of our highest growing sectors. Over a 4-year period of time, we've experienced over 18 million square feet of bulk distribution facilities and spec warehouses. And then getting back to the transportation component, they're all along our major Interstate 270 and 70 corridor. And that's really one of the key locations that we have been very successful with investing on our interstate system.
Wow, that's very impressive. But you touched on it a little bit before, but what are some other attributes do you think a good supply chain leader has?
Well, we talked about it, and I think that really focuses on the adaptability, the ability for a region to adapt to those supply chain changes and changes in those freight movements. Obviously, with the Panama Canal, that is allowing larger vessels to go through the canal, which has opened the opportunity for us to better utilize the inland waterway system. That has allowed us to reinforce those partnerships we have with the Port of New Orleans and the Port of Plaquemines, which is another southern Louisiana port. Those discussions are focusing on launching a new way to ship containerized cargo. And so that's container on vessel or container on barge. And then the other thing is when agricultural products from the Pacific Northwest were rerouted from China to countries like Egypt, our port system absorbed this shift, utilizing the inland waterway system. So those are examples of the adaptability. I think also just focusing on adaptability to collaborate, to build consensus when we're setting those transportation priorities, working with public and private sector leaders and identifying what those nationally significant projects are. And then I think another attribute that's worth mentioning is vision. The St. Louis region is a global logistics hub. Our vision is to strengthen the region and the nation's economic competitiveness through efficient and reliable transportation. We continue to partner with those private sector leaders. Our successes include $600 million of interstate improvements along Interstate 270. This is a project that's, again, multi-jurisdictional. It's in Illinois and it's in Missouri. With the background I have from working with the Illinois Department of Transportation, when you're working with 2 DOTs, it can be really difficult finding a period of time where 2 DOTs have funding at the same time. Funding for the DOTs can be very cyclic, depending on what's going on with their budgets or other high priority projects. For this region, based on all that legwork we did, partnering with our elected leaders and with the industry, our 2 DOTs work collectively together and we're able to deliver those projects. So that's how our vision is to have that competitive, efficient and reliable transportation system. And that's where we're doing it through these partnerships that we have and focusing on these nationally significant projects in the St. Louis region.
You have to be creative in a sense too, because if you don't have the vision and if you don't have the adaptability or the flexibility, then it's going to be a huge challenge.
Yep, and that's where I think that the best example we've got as far as being innovative and creative is the fact that we're thinking of other ways to transport freight. And that's where traditionally we do not ship containerized cargo up the Mississippi River, along the Missouri River or the Illinois River. And so this is a new way of transporting freight. It's cheaper. It takes trucks to the interstate system, so it's safer and it's sustainable from an environmental perspective. So that's where we're thinking out of the box, and that's where we're trying to identify cheaper ways to transport freight.
Mm-hmm. And when we think of visionaries, we usually think of like artists or musicians, and that's not necessarily true because you always have to have that vision and be a creative thinker when you're in an industry, a technical industry like this as well.
Yep, and I got one more example on that, and it's a simple thing, and it's the public-private partnerships when it comes to funding. We have the Merchants Rail Bridge. It's a 122-year-old rail bridge, primary east-west rail crossing over the Mississippi River, $222 million. Terminal Railroad Association of St. Louis recently received a CRISI grant from USDOT, What's interesting is it was only 20% of the overall cost. And so again, I think that's a creative way of financing a project. That's where you're really maximizing those federal dollars, where the public sector is working with US DOT, but with only 20% of that cost, this project was able to move to construction, and it's a $220 million project. It has national significance that will help increase that capacity, and the trains moving over the bridge will be able to travel much faster.
Mm-hmm. I don't doubt that in any way. And then, are there any challenges that you have faced in the industry? And if so, how did you overcome them?
So obviously I've talked about all the great things we've done from an infrastructure perspective. But actually, I think a challenge or a weakness we continue to have at a national and local level is just ensuring that we have a sustainable infrastructure funding source. We need to have consistent investment in our infrastructure to advance from an economic perspective and also at a global perspective to continue to compete. If we keep having cyclic periods of time with the funding, we're not consistently investing in that infrastructure. We know that freight is going to increase by 40% over the next 3 decades. And it's really important as a nation that we have that consistent funding. And obviously with the things we just talked about, that means you need to be innovative, you need to be creative, you have to engage the private sector. And obviously we've had a lot of wins with that, but again, it's a persistent challenge. And that's where we continue to look for new ways to find affordable infrastructure options.
Mm-hmm. And then why do you think more women should be involved in the industry? And it could be logistics or in the supply chain, but how can we continue to recruit and retain them?
Well, I think number one, it's fun. It's a great career path. And I think that the opportunities are there. So focusing on the St. Louis region, again, I mentioned we have 6 Class 1 railroads. We have the barge industry, the trucking industry, the airports. Each one of those modes of transportation have unique opportunities as it relates to the supply chain and to transportation. It could be a deckhand on a barge. It could be an accountant. You could be in IT. You could be in sales and marketing. And so you could be in the insurance industry. We have manufacturing logistics. We have the global companies with like Worldwide Technologies, AB InBev, Procter & Gamble. And so that's where, from my perspective, the opportunities are endless. I mentioned that freight is going to continue to grow over the next 3 decades. And the skill set that you build in any of the positions I've mentioned are basically universal. You can take that skill set and apply it to any region or to any country. And then the other thing is there are more women working in these industries, which makes it even easier for women to find that support. It also makes it easier to, see that visibility.
Mm-hmm. Do you think mentoring will make a difference?
Absolutely. And that's what I am a mentor for the University of Missouri St. Louis for their Supply Chain Advisory Council. I also work with 2 of our local universities in a grade school and typically go to their facilities twice a year, talk about my role, my responsibilities. I think it's important not only to let women know and young women and girls know about these career opportunities. I think it's important to see people like myself be visible, talk about how it's fun, it's exciting, and the opportunities are endless.
So this is a major theme that I've gotten from these interviews that I've been doing, is that really representation matters. And I am sure our viewers are like, she's talking about it again. But when you have people, when you're a young girl, so if you talk to girls in elementary or in middle school and you tell them that, hey, transportation is cool, science is cool, that makes them interested, because we've been told for so long that that's boys stuff, that's a boys field. And so when these girls see someone like you, a successful woman, tell them and be like, look at all these cool things I'm doing. It really makes a difference to them. And it's going to make a huge difference to this younger generation of supply chain professionals that are entering the workforce.
Yep, and then I did mention, we've also done something really creative where we have partnered with the state of Missouri, University of Missouri, St. Louis. They were able to secure an education grant. And that's where they are working with the high schools and setting a one-day field trip. And what that consists of, number one, they start the day and they, the mode of transportation, they use our light rail, our L.I.N.K. So that's a mode of transportation, able to interact with our staff. And then we go to the Gateway National Arch. The arch is located on the Mississippi River. And at that location, you have the best view of all the intermodal infrastructure that we have in the area. You can see our interstate highways, the 6 Class 1 railroads, and the barge industry all interacting. And so that's a that's a fun example where it's hands-on, they can see firsthand. And then you have individuals from the different industries. We have them come in and they talk about what their role and responsibility is. I mentioned we're also responsible for the riverboats in front of the Gateway Arch. And then it also includes a ride on the riverboat. So again, it's hands-on, it's fun, it's interactive.
Oh, that's so cool. Can I come?
Absolutely.
But so I have other questions to ask you before that. But what advice do you have for those first starting out in the industry?
My advice is, and it's not something I necessarily did myself, so it's something that I feel really strongly on is, and I mentioned mentoring and sponsors and getting involved in organizations. And by doing that, it really helps you with your networking skills. It also helps you become a little bit more aware of what's going on in your industry. As an engineer at the University of Missouri Columbia, I really didn't participate in any of the organizations. So when it came to my leadership skills and my management skills, I was probably a little flat. And so when I went to work for the Illinois Department of Transportation, those first couple of years, I did recognize that when you do go to these networking events, you are meeting with other people in your industry who have different responsibilities, and you get a better handle of what's going on. It makes you a more effective engineer, and it makes you more effective in the position that you have. You also learn just basic communication skills and how to interact with people in a professional environment, having confidence to extend your hand out and give a really firm handshake. And for me, first couple of years as a new engineer, it took a while to build that skill set. Had I participated in the many opportunities that are offered at most of the high schools and the colleges and universities, I think I actually would have had a greater jumpstart on my career.
Mm-hmm. I can see that too, especially networking is even more important now as we move into like this technological world, because you have sites like LinkedIn where you can connect with people and you can talk about your respective industries as well. And we're always, at my job, we're always told to keep your business cards and then connect with the people right away when you get home so that they remember who you are, because you want to stand out to people because they will be able to help you, just like how you're helping them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And then, oh gosh. And then, okay, sorry. I don't know what happened, but Mary, I know that you are a very busy lady, so I only just have one more question for you today. And how does it feel to be named as one of SCCE's top women in supply chain?
Well, it's an honor, and it's reflective of the many opportunities I have been given in this industry. It's a reflection of the St. Louis region's leadership that includes our elected leaders, public and private sector leaders, all supporting programs like the St. Louis Regional Freightway and our efforts to support the manufacturing and logistics industries. We're really proud of the Freightway's accomplishments and our efforts to elevate our global logistics hub. And we're grateful for this opportunity to be recognized at a national level through the Supply and Demand Chain Executive publication. And when we talked about mentoring and having that visibility, I think this is another great example of where you're helping us with that visibility and encouraging young people to get into this industry. So thank you.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. But thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Nope, I appreciate your time today and the opportunity to be part of this recognition.
All right, thank you.